it's here to stay. And it's so important that we understand the roots of girl drama so that we can help to support our daughters through it. When I use the word drama, I'm not minimizing what happens with our girls and their friendships. It's real. I use the word drama because the emotions are high. Just like when you go to a theater and they have to portray the emotions bigger than normal so that the audience really feels it. That's where our girls are. They are in the midst of girl drama. Now, rejected, confused, and alone, that's how I felt 35 years ago when my friends ditched me. Yes, I had girl drama. I grew up in a small town in Texas, and for lunch in junior high, we were allowed to go off campus. We only had a few restaurants to choose from, like, quick ones, and there was a corner store or a food truck, but we didn't have a lot of time. So it was really important for us to have our plans all laid out before the lunch bell rang. So back to my moment of wonderful rejection. When I went to junior high, my best friend of 3 years went to a different junior high. So just like many of your daughters, it was a time for me to establish new friendships. Lucky for me, there were two girls who had been friends for quite a while who were willing to take me in and become friends with me. That meant a friendship triangle, which some of you may know is quite often the most difficult and dysfunctional of friendships. But we hung out for a few months. We had like sleepovers. We went to lunch together. We had classes together. Things were going great. But then lunchtime came, and that's when this moment of rejection happened. I asked my friends if they wanted to go to lunch, and they said no, they were going to stay and they were going to study. No problem, right? So I was walking across the street to go to the corner store to pick up my favorites, Tab Cola. Oh my gosh, so disgusting, right? And Doritos. Those were the days. But when I was walking, I saw my two friends getting into a car to go out to lunch with one of their dads, without me. That's the moment I got ditched and felt rejected, confused, and alone, and it sucked. Then what happened? I'd like to say that I talked to them about it and we got through it. We became closer friends, but we didn't. It was a total friendship fallout. I survived it, but man, it really hurt and it stuck with me. Now, in the next few years, your daughter is going to have moments like these. Moments when she feels rejected and lonely. She will also have moments where she is the girl who is excluding someone or who says something a little harsh. Starting from the day she was born, your daughter started learning how to navigate relationships. In middle school, your daughter has an amazing opportunity to learn a lot about navigating friendships through the ups and downs. And you are her best teacher and role model. And remember, when the going gets tough, that your daughter has the strength to get through whatever comes her way, especially with your support and amazing guidance. We're going to talk about how you can best support your daughter through the ups and downs of friendships, but today we're going to start with understanding the ups and downs of friendships, because when you understand, it allows you to take a different approach when you are going to support and encourage and empower your daughter. You have to know the root of these things so that you really know like what they need from you. Let's talk about the evolution of friendship. Let's see how it changes from the beginning and see how friendships change over time throughout the years, because it doesn't stay the same. As you probably have already noticed, your daughter's relationships are not the same now as they were in preschool. So we start with preschool friendships, which were just so magical, right? Lots of hugs and hand holding, but they were also direct. They had no problem saying, no, I don't like that. I don't want to do that. And they would say stuff like, I'm not going to be your friend if you don't do this. It was just very powerful and direct, and it was like nothing passive aggressive for most kids. Sometimes they will, but most kids at this age are very direct. So it makes the friendships very, very vulnerable, very authentic, and pretty powerful and strong. Now, there is power at this age, right? They recognize that friendships are powerful, and that's why they would say things like, I'm not going to be your friend if you don't do this, this, and this. Then we have elementary friendships. They're just a little more important, a little more complicated, and a bit more dramatic. And again, I'm not using this word drama to minimize the emotions at all. The emotions are really big for our girls. It's wonderful that their emotions are there. We want to see that. We want to have our girls, our daughters, and our sons connecting through emotions, not just the things they're doing together. So it's really wonderful. But the friendships are important and powerful. But then we head to friendships are taken up a notch. The reason is because they are changing. So their friendships get deeper and more connected on different levels. And there's a lot of shifts in friendships in this age, from going from elementary school to middle school. So the friendships are a little deeper. They're more meaningful, and they're more dramatic, and they are a bit more complicated. We add in not just who are you hanging out with, but what is the social hierarchy as well. So what is the source of drama? This is what's so important for us to understand, what makes friendships emotional and dramatic. And there's a lot of factors, we could talk about this for hours, but we're going to go through just some of the basic ones. So right now in middle school and in high school, of course it's a continuation, our girls are learning social skills. So are their male counterparts. They don't have it all figured out. They're learning how to negotiate. They're learning about kindness, inclusion, graciousness, and they are learning about group dynamics, which are extremely complicated. This is where the social hierarchy comes in, where our kids at this age in middle school, because they are developing in a different way, they can see how they fit in with the people around them. So you really need to be compassionate with your daughter and the other girls, because they are still learning. They have more time alone with their friends. They have play dates no longer. It's not play dates, it's get-togethers, it's sleepovers. And then you add into this smartphones, direct messaging, chats of all sorts. Their social life becomes more intense, but also it's more permeating and accessible and confusing, because once they hit social media or they have their phones, the texting and all of that, really the social life can go on 24/7. Even if you take away their phones at 8 or 9, something like that, when they hop on the next morning, it's like time to catch up with all the social stuff that went on. So it really is, there's just a lot that they're learning just about dynamics of socializing, but then throw in that good old, screen and social media, and it's a whole nother level. This is a biggie. Your daughter's brain began remodeling around when she started puberty, and it continues until about 23 to 25 years old. This brain remodeling is no small feat. It's a big one. So one of the things that happens during this remodel is that their frontal lobe is offline about 70% of the time. And their frontal lobe is all about logic, and it's about planning. And one of the things it also does is it interprets emotions before a behavior takes place. So what is ruling the roost? The amygdala. The amygdala is where the fight, flight, or freeze originates. Amygdala is all about churning out emotions. Something comes in from the outside, an emotion is generated, or sometimes it's an internal dialogue and an emotion is generated. So there's a lot of really big emotions. If you think about some of the songs that you're attached to, a lot of those were during middle school and high school years. One thing we know is that memories with emotions are remembered much better. So that's why you remember so many things so well from middle and high school. For most of us anyway. Some people like to just block it all out. But okay, so the amygdala is all about emotions, and it really is in control. And the other thing is that our kids then begin to have the ability to think existentially and to see how they relate to the people around them. So you can see how this changes their whole perspective. They can begin to see if they're in the popular group, or if they're being ostracized, or if people are making snide comments about them, or when they're being excluded, they can feel it even more because they understand it on a different level. So this brain remodel and being able to think on a different level really does increase the the drama and the ups and downs. And many of you are probably starting to see the increase in emotions for your daughters. This may look like They react bigger than what the situation really calls for. Like, let's say they got the wrong kind of cheese on their plate, that it may end in tears. It doesn't mean that their feelings aren't valid. It just means that the emotions are taking over. The other thing you might see is that they might start to cry for no reason. And if you can point out to them, if that happens, ask them maybe like, what are you feeling? Like, what are you really upset about? And have a conversation. So many times, a lot of parents like to just shut it down. Like, oh my gosh, you're blowing this out of proportion. Why are you crying? Nothing's even going on. So when we can stop and have that compassion and understand they don't get it either, then sometimes you can even laugh about it. You got to know your family, you got to know your kids, but sometimes you can bring in humor in those situations if it's appropriate. Now, another piece is oxytocin. This is a bonding chemical. Now, it's really odd. When boys have an upswing of oxytocin, it creates a physical dominance urge for them. This is where you'll see wrestling and you'll see the physicality coming out in the middle school boys. For the girls, it's social dominance is what it really triggers. So in the cave women days, this meant survival, right? They needed to find their tribe of women to help protect the kids, to help create the food sources. So it was a way to survive. And this has stuck with our girls and with us, that we are looking to gather as a group to be part of the social hierarchy. Now, their friendship status in their group is a huge part of who they are, and it can be all-encompassing. This is the reason some of your daughters might be staying in toxic friendships. They might have friends who don't treat them very well. But the idea of being alone is just so awful at this age that they would rather be in a toxic friendship than to be in no friendship. So that's why if you're getting frustrated with your daughter who has a friend that's not so great for her, understanding why she's staying in it can be helpful. But we also have to remember that they are starting to set patterns for life in middle school and high school. So if they do stay in these toxic friendships, it can create this pattern of unhealthy friendships, unhealthy relationships, but can translate into a romantic relationship as well. So they may be in a marriage, for instance, that is toxic or not great for them, but again, it's back to the pattern, I'm willing to take this instead of being alone. So we need to make sure that we're able to step in and help them to navigate toxic friendships, have them understand what it's doing to them emotionally, and make sure that they know there's a better relationship out there for them. Now, one thing to keep in mind, remember I said that our girls are still learning, right, how to socialize. If your daughter is in a toxic friendship, it doesn't mean that her friend is an awful person, because that person is also learning relationship patterns, right? So if that person has your daughter as a friend who's kind of the doormat, the other person is learning, oh, I can just be rude and condescending and get my way. So that is a pattern that is sticking with them as well. Sometimes a toxic friendship, it's not one they have to walk away from. It's just one that your daughter has to learn how to set her own boundaries and to stand up for herself. Sometimes you can take that path. Other times it is about finding a better relationship and a better friendship. Okay, here's another thing that comes into play. Some people are born extremely competitive, right? We all know that. We have people in our lives like that. And in middle school and high school, the competition really begins to heat up. Part of that is because of our society. We are very driven by achievement. And we even see this in academics. It's not just sports. But there's this competition, and then the other side of it is kind of rejection or disappointment. And it gets really intense at this age when they're competing for what they see as like spots in the high colleges, or it is kind of a little out of control, I'm not going to lie. And there's one thing I notice also at this age is the parents get more into the competition and the achievement. So we have to kind of temper our own desire for our kids to be high octane achievers and be more supportive of their efforts. So less about the achievement, more about the effort. And in friendships, we also see this in that information equals power. So what do I know about who? And what is this wonderful thing that we have that comes into play in middle school and high school? Social media. What better place to put the information that you know to make yourself relevant? And that's where cyberbullying comes in, because if nobody's paying attention to you, you don't have friends, you know what? You can step in and cyberbully, and all of a sudden you become relevant. There's that old adage, like, what is it? Bad publicity is better than no publicity. It is exactly like that as a teenager. It's better for people to be talking about you, even if it's bad, than to not even be visible. Also, invitations are power. Invitations to parties, invitations to group chats, invitations to a team, to a club, so many things. Invitations are power for girls. And also, the number of likes on social media has become a contest, a numerical contest for popularity. And this is where we see girls kind of pushing the limits on what they're posting. We have to understand, if we see a post we don't appreciate that our girl has put up there, we need to have a conversation about it. But be very careful about the shaming and judging and all of that. We need to have a conversation to talk about the choice. All right, clicks. Clicks get a bad rap. Clicks are absolutely normal. Think about the people that you hang out with. There's something that brings all of you together, right? The problem comes in when there's a group mentality of exclusion or being mean, things like that. And also typically there's a hierarchy in some of these cliques, especially the negative cliques, that teaches certain ideas. Like that there's people who are high in the totem pole and low in the totem pole, right? So the queen bee in these cliques, you need to do whatever she says, you need to do what she wants so that you please her, so that you are securing your spot in this clique. So again, going back to the idea of you don't want to be alone. And sometimes the kids in these cliques get these job descriptions, if you will, of what they're supposed to do, how they're supposed to act, how they're supposed to dress, all of these things, and they lose their individuality. Now, here's the thing about cliques. Talk to any high schooler and they can tell you exactly the cliques in the lunchroom. It is hilarious. Like if you have a high schooler, have them sit down and draw out for you the map of the cafeteria. They will come up with all sorts of different terms, but like here's the drama kids, here's the band kids, here's the cheerleaders, here's the jocks, here's the stoners. They know where the cliques are. They know that they exist, and they're all based on something that these kids have in common. If you have a middle schooler, you can try this. I don't think it's quite as solidified in middle school, but middle school is when they're creating those cliques, trying to figure out what clique they belong to. That's why you might see them like drop certain extracurricular activities, because they're like, that clique's not for me anymore. It's not always about the thing. Let's say it's soccer. It's not that sometimes they don't like soccer anymore. It's that they don't like the people in their soccer group anymore, their soccer team. So you may see a lot of changes like that based on looking for their own clique. Then we have this aggression suppression. This is when we try to, we do this as parents. We inadvertently teach our girls to avoid conflict at all costs, to be nice no matter what. One of the things that we see for adults is I've seen seminars come through, like email and stuff, seminars on how to say no. I'm like, oh my gosh, I can't believe that we have to have this. And those seminars are typically for women, not for men. It's because of this aggression suppression. And I feel like our society is getting better about this, but we still have some issues we need to work on. So, we're kind of pushing down the aggression. And when I say aggression, I don't mean like hitting and slapping and things like that. I mean like aggressive as in a confident kind of aggression, right? Like that if you want to say no, or if you feel like you're being treated poorly, that you're okay to step up and say something. So with this aggression suppression, that is when indirect meanness occurs, the stuff that we call mean girl behavior. It's not really taught another way, right? That to how to have a conflict. That's one thing I teach girls, is how to have a successful and effective conflict conversation instead of just avoiding it. And then because of the aggression suppression and a lot of other stuff, we have what's called relational aggression. This is aggression within the confines of friendships and relationships. This is the stuff we know as mean girl behavior: gossiping, rumors, exclusion, sneers. You can name it. I'm sure you can stop and think about, even as an adult, some of this relational aggression that you see and experience. Most of it is done because they are taught to be nice and not be confrontational. Now let that soak in. Mean girl behavior is because they are taught to be nice and not confrontational. That's really sad, right? So when friendships define who they are, they're really vying for those friendships, and they have an unhealthy toolbox. Unless we give them a healthy toolbox, an effective toolbox, they don't know any better. They turn to these passive aggressive, gossiping, exclusion, all of these things. So what I really want to know is, what are some of the things that you've seen already? And these things do pop up starting in preschool. It's not like in middle school, all of a sudden these things occur. What happens is they occur on a more seemingly adult-like level. And that's why it looks differently for us and it feels differently. And remember, our kids' emotions are bigger in middle and high school, so it feels more intense. And they're able to think about it, ruminate it, just think about what they're like, how they contributed to it. There's so many different factors as to why it's bigger in middle school and high school. So it's really super important that we learn how to guide them. It's our duty and it's our privilege as parents to guide our kids through these ups and downs of friendships. But what we want to do is we want to make sure that we are teaching them ways to healthily a word, how to have healthy friendships and relationships. Like, how do they deal with the things that come up? And we could do that through role modeling, through giving them advice and suggestions. Of course, we don't want to lecture them, and the advice only comes out if they ask for it. We want to teach them to fight fair. It's okay to have fights with the people that you love, but it's not okay to spread rumors or to post things on social media. They have to learn how to disagree fairly. In other words, fight fair. And then we want them to know that their relationships, their friendships should primarily make them feel good. It doesn't mean 100% of the time. If you think about your relationships with your friends or maybe a spouse or something, like, it's not 100% feel good. That's not reality. But it shouldn't be that 10% of the time you feel great and the other 90% of the time you feel bad about yourself or about the friendship or you're insecure about it. Overall, it should feel good. And that's something that we want to teach our own kids, because sometimes they get this idea about BFF, best friends forever. You take whatever crap comes your way because you're best friends. That's not what we want to teach them. We want to teach them to really look out for themselves and to understand what a healthy friendship is. If you have any questions about what's going on with girl drama and the why, please feel free to post in the comments in our Facebook group, and I will answer those questions, I promise.